千里之行，始于足下。A journey of 1,000 miles begins beneath the feet. We now gather in the Tao to travel the journey together. Welcome to Tao Talks with Derek Lin, where we take a deep dive into the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. As always, I want to extend my welcome to you. Thank you for joining us. I would like to invite you to center your thoughts and direct your attention to this moment in time, to the here and now, to be fully present and mindfully aware as we are ready ourselves for this sacred process in the Tao with one another. And I have a slide here that I hope will illustrate the multiple levels. To the left-hand side, you'll see the column for the context or the domain. And you can see the different levels here. We range from the universe to the earth, the planet itself, the biosphere, which is where the living things live on this planet. Then we go to the human species, that's we ourselves, and then we drill down further into the human mind. And you can see to the right, I'm using some graphical representations. I've got a galaxy there representing the universe. I've got the image of the earth there. That is not just the earth, but also it's the biosphere. It's all the living things, all the human beings that live on our little planet. And then, of course, I have the thinker to represent the human mind. So for each one of these domains, for each world or each level, let's talk about the root or the source. What is fundamental? What is basic in that domain? For the universe, we're talking about the root being the source of universal creation, whatever that is. Scientifically, we can call it the origin of the Big Bang. And if that is the root of the plant, what are the leaves? Well, at the universal level, at the cosmic level, we're talking about all the celestial bodies of the cosmos. And that includes the galaxies, the stars, the planets. It also includes like satellites and all the other celestial bodies out there. So at that level, all of these leaves trace back to the root of universal creation. Then let's get to the just single out one planet, our planet. And that is, of course, the Earth. And what is the root of that? What is the source of our planet? So we know from science that it's planetary formation, that it is following the formation of the solar system around the sun. Then the planet itself is undergoing geological processes over literally billions of years. And then there's, of course, the evolution of life. So with that as the root, what are the leaves? Well, we're talking about everything in the world, from the highest mountain peaks to the deepest ocean trenches, everything there. We're also talking about deep into the earth itself, to the core of the planet. Then let's go to still the world, but the living components of it, the biosphere. The root for all the living things will be the females of the species, the pin. The biological procreation for the next generation is where all living things come from. This is the source for the myriad things. Every single life form, all living things of the earth, not just at this moment, but past, present, and future. All the living things that ever were and ever will be. Then, out of all the different living things, I want to zoom in on one particular living thing, and that is us, human beings. So just like how we started out with all of the universe, but then we zoom into one planet, here we're talking about all the living things, the many, many different species, and now zooming into the species of Homo sapiens. So what is the root of that? What is the source of that? Well, we cannot deny that where we all come from, every member of the human species comes from the womb of the woman. It's the process of conception, pregnancy, and birth since the dawn of humanity. What does that produce? What does that cover? Every single one of the 8 billion people living today, plus everyone who has ever lived. We all came out of that process. So past, present, and future, all human beings come from that. Now, I want to take all the different aspects of a human being and just zoom in on one aspect, and that is the mind. The root, the gate of that, well, the source of creativity. We don't quite know what that is in human consciousness, but we have different names for that. One of them is the muse of inspiration, where artists, musicians go find their muse for inspiration. If that is the root, what are the leaves? Every idea anyone has ever had, all inventions, past, present, and future. Now, when we look at all of this, you can note that the commonality in the right-hand column, the leaves, there is something that stands out, and that is words like all and every. And indeed, just imagine if we're looking at the Earth from space, we're looking at this planet. When we do that, when we see this planet, this one image is something that contains everybody alive today. And as I mentioned, everyone who has ever lived and everyone to come, except perhaps in the distant future, people who are born on other planets, born in space, will not be included in that. But as of this point in time, when we look at the Earth, that's everybody. And it's the same when we talk about how everybody, regardless of gender, came from the birthing process. That's why we have the mystic female, the universal mother, no exceptions. And of course, ideas and inventions, all the ideas and inventions to come, things that we cannot even envision right now, they all come from that mysterious root or that gate. And All we can do is just say, well, everybody has a source of creativity. Now, we don't need to limit ourselves to just creative pursuits like arts and music and inventions and whatnot. We can expand the scope of our consideration. We can say that your mind, the gateway to your mind, the portal, that is the single source for every one of your thoughts. Some of the thoughts are ideas. Some of the thoughts are perhaps emotional reactions or contemplations, and so on. The mind being the source for all the thoughts you've ever had and ever will have will be simply a statement of fact. Your consciousness is the root to anchor your inner world, including all of your memories, all of your emotions, everything you have ever learned, all of your hopes and dreams for the future. Some of these thoughts that you have in your mind, the thoughts that you decide to act on, the thoughts that motivate you to take action, those are the ones that have a chance of manifesting in reality. For instance, just an example, if you have a certain talent, you decide to enter a contest, then there's a chance you will win. Or there's a chance that participation in the contest leads to some sort of opportunities you otherwise would not have. So the basic idea is that some of these ideas, some of the thoughts that you've had in your mind can lead to manifestation of reality. Therefore, all of your manifestations in your reality ultimately trace back to the thoughts originating from your mind, the root of it all, the gateway to all of it. When the Tao sages look at this pattern, they apply the idea to destiny and life itself. And that's why they identify everything that you see here as the gates of the mystic female. And let's drill down further into this concept, the root of heaven and earth. This is not unique to the Tao. In the Tao, from Lao Tzu, we have learned these lines. The gate of the mystic female is called the root of heaven and earth. And then we discussed about how everything that's been happening in your life ultimately trace back to some sort of thought in the mind. Therefore, your true self, this you at the deepest part of your being, the core of your being, that is the root cause of everything in your world, positive or negative. So this is a teaching from the Tao. As I said, this is not unique to the Tao. There's the Zen tradition. The Zen Buddhism tradition is a fusion of Buddhist teachings from India with Tao philosophy of ancient China. So a notable teacher in the Zen tradition is the sixth patriarch, Huineng, who lived hundreds of years ago. He was the source for the Platform Sutra, just as Lao Tzu was the source for the Tao Te Ching. So the sixth patriarch said, the self-nature can give rise to 10,000 dharmas. 自性能生万法. 10,000 dharmas is a literal translation of one fa. What it really means is all dharmas and not a literal 10,000. So what the sixth patriarch was saying is the same idea with slightly different words. Your self-nature is the source of all dharmic manifestations in your life, positive or negative. So this comes from the Zen Buddhism tradition, represented here by the lotus flower. The lotus flower has long been associated with the Buddhist teaching that the self-nature, who you truly are, can arise in the material world, much like the lotus flower growing out of the mud in the pond. Although the material world is full of tainting influences, it is possible that the self-nature is untainted by all of it, just like the lotus flower grows out of the pond, but doesn't take on any of the mud, blooming beautifully. So out of all this, what we can say is that these sages from the two different traditions were really talking about the same thing, which is a teaching about the ultimate responsibility. No matter what it is that has happened to you, good or bad, positive or negative, you ultimately are the source. It may be difficult sometimes to get our head around this idea. So I have prepared a couple of slides to help us come to grips. We mentioned positive and negative. So I want to start with the negative in life. When something bad happens to you, I want to highlight two different paradigms, the conventional thinking and the Tao mind. When bad things happen, the conventional thinking is going to look at it and then assign the cause to them, to others, other people, or factors external to us outside of our control. They are the ones. They did it to me. And a great question to ask is, well, who are they that you're talking about? So as an example, when it comes to economic conditions, they, perhaps your friend will tell you, the friend who is complaining about how bad the economy is, the friend may say that, well, they did it to me, they're causing me to have economic issues. They, in this case, would be the wealthy elite who are so greedy, they satisfy their greed, they maximize their profits at the expense of the working class. And if it's not the economy, if it's something else, for instance, a common negative thing that we see all the time is someone being tardy, someone being late to an appointment. So that's a negative thing, and that person may say, well, the traffic was horrible. So they are the ones, they did it to me. Who are they? Well, all the bad drivers on the road. You see, they cause all the traffic problems, and they are the ones that made me an hour late. So again, the finger is pointing somewhere else. The blame is to them. When we understand that we are our own causes for everything, then that is the Tao mind, which looks at it differently. I am the source of my own problems. So the friend who's complaining or the person who is late may strongly disagree with the statement. They may say, no, it wasn't me, it was them. But the Tao cultivator will look at it in a different way. When it comes to economic conditions, if the Tao cultivator is not doing so well, so it's a negative downturn in his personal finance, he may think, well, I could have planned my personal finance to take the overall economic downturn into account. I could have saved, I could have prepared for a rainy day, but I didn't do that. So at the very minimum, I contributed to the cause. I had a part in it. There was something I did not do. I did not make preparations. I did not see it coming. I did not have contingencies ready. And what about when it comes to traffic? If the Tao cultivator ran late because of bad traffic, it's not because of the bad drivers who caused traffic problems. It was the Tao cultivator who would consider how, while it was within my abilities to leave an hour early, then I would be on time instead of an hour late. But I didn't do that. So I at least contributed to the cause. I had a part in it. So this goes back to a wise saying that look back in time to all the experiences that you've ever had, the good as well as the bad, all the setbacks, all the disappointments, all the problems, all the troubles, all the road bumps in your journey. There was one thing in common in all of them, and that is you. You were there. And this is much more radical. This is saying that, well, you had a hand in it. So then let's pursue these two different lines of thought to the logical conclusion. What is the outlook for the conventional thinking? Well, the outlook is rather bleak. The outlook is not great. It's hopeless because conventional thinking says, well, I can't change them. They're the ones that caused the problem. They're the ones that did it to me. I cannot change them. So it's hopeless. From the other perspective, the Tao perspective, it's different. It's hopeful because I can always change myself. If I am the source of my own problems, I will trace the problem to that part of myself which is the source. Then I will decide to make some changes. So what is the result? What is the outcome? In conventional thinking, well, I just told you nothing will change because I cannot change them. So life is rather depressing. The result is different for the Tao cultivator. The Tao cultivator, thinking about this, will say, well, the result is entirely up to me to decide. I get to decide what to change about myself, correcting whatever issues I may have at the source, thus producing a different outcome, a different result next time. Now, I want to emphasize that the upper row, the conventional thinking, this is a persistent and powerful illusion. It looks real. Others are to blame. I mean, come on, everybody can see that, right? It's not me, it's them. It's a powerful illusion. The bottom row, the Tao cultivator's perspective, that is the reality that is not illusory. You always have a part in it, no matter how it may look at first. And there is always something you can do. You underestimate how powerful you really are. Having addressed the negative, let's also talk about the positive. Something good. What happens when you have done something good for other people? Again, we have the conventional thinking versus the Tao mind. And here we've got the motive, the debt, and the reward. Let's go through them. In conventional thinking, what is the motive? Well, that's just the kind of person I am. I helped them. I did them a favor. So it's positioning the self at a higher perch, helping other people because, well, you have the ability to help them. So you decide to do them a favor. Now, when we talk about this radical philosophy of orienting on the self as the source, it is also the self as the recipient of everything. The Tao mind, the Tao cultivators, will turn that around and say, I actually didn't do it to benefit them. Ultimately, I did it for myself, for my own reasons. And I'm glad that I helped them. But I did it so because it was the right thing to do, because it makes me a better person, because I should, not because I was out to save people, help people, to incur some sort of debt. And that is the next column. But you see, the conventional thinking will say that, well, I did them a favor, I helped them, therefore they owe me. One day I'm going to call them in on it. I'm going to call in my chips. I'm going to collect the debt that they owe me. A lot of times in life, we hear people talk about this. Well, I still owe them a few favors. Or conversely, well, they still owe me favors from before. So I'm going to ask them to do XYZ. That is depicting life in a transactional light. That everything is debt and repayment and the incurring of more debt. I want to point out this is not the perspective of the Tao cultivators. The Tao cultivator, while straight up think about how, well, I did it for my own reasons, I did it for myself, I did it because it was the right thing to do, therefore, nobody owes me anything. I don't expect anyone to repay me for whatever, because I did it because I thought it was the right thing to do. This goes on to the reward. The conventional thinking is that having done them a favor, not only do they owe me, but I should get some kind of recognition for this. I should get some kind of reward. I should be compensated in some way. As you can imagine, that's not the thinking of the Tao cultivators at all. The work is its own reward. Now, indeed, the Tao cultivator may get recognition and reward anyway, but that is not the expectation. That is not anywhere near any kind of requirement for the Tao cultivator. And again, the Tao cultivator would say, well, look, I contributed my effort only because it was the right thing to do. After all, we come into this world together in order to help one another. We're using this illusion of separation we're forgetting that we're actually connected as one at a fundamental level of reality. We appear to be separate individuals. Therefore, in the level of that illusion, I can say, hey, I'm going to go the extra mile for you. In reality, at the underlying level of oneness, we're resolving karmic obligations for ourselves. Now, I know this is a difficult concept to grasp. Let me illustrate it this way. Think about this athlete, this incredibly gifted athlete who is phenomenal in his or her chosen field. The athlete says, what happens when the athlete says, I need to practice 1 more hour today for the coach? Okay, well, you can expect that to be something that you hear from the dedicated athletes. I need to practice 1 more hour today for the coach. And there could be variations. I need to do an extra set for the coach. That is an illustration of what I'm talking about here, because the athlete is doing that 1 more hour of practice, that extra set of exercise for his or her own self and his and her own reasons to benefit his or her own physical condition. But the illusion that we use to do that is that we're doing it for someone else. This is why ordinarily in religious teachings, you're going to hear the teachers say, we should help other people. We should do whatever we can to help other people. That is good. It is what the deity wants. The Tao transcends ordinary religions by pointing out that if you think that way, if you follow that, then it is possible to fall into a trap. That mentally you place yourself higher than the others, that you may imagine that your good deed is more important than it actually is. You may feel entitled somehow. Hey, what's in it for me? What do I get out of this? You may be keeping track of the score. And that's when we say, they owe me. I've got some chips. I'm going to collect them one day. That's the score. That's the debt. So the above, all of this is why sometimes philosophers will say there's no true altruism, that people never do anything for purely selfless reasons. So everyone does things in selfish ways. While in the Tao, we're just recognizing the underlying oneness connecting all of humanity. For the something good that you do for other people, it is something good that you have done for yourself. So this is the application of Tiandi Gen, the root of heaven and earth, applying to life, to everything that you and I do. So let me jump to the summary to talk about what we have discussed. And of course, the foremost concept that we talked about today is the Valley Spirit. So as a quick summary of that, think about the openness, the receptivity, that the Valley is accommodating, it is welcoming, it is tolerant, it's compassionate, and there's that generosity of spirit. Of course, there's the nurturing and protective aspect of the Valley. The Valley cradles all myriad things within it. The Valley provides sustenance to all. It's not just a container, it's the container for living things. Taking a cue from that, we also want to approach other people with the protective embrace and the compassionate nature, the generosity of the valley. And lastly, let's talk about the eternal nature of the valley spirit. The valley spirit is synonymous with the yin principle, which is a universal principle that has existed since the beginning of time and continues on throughout all of eternity. This is reflective of the immortal human spirit. And here I'd like to recall to mind the example that we went through about the valley undergoing seasonal changes. So no matter how many different seasons have passed for the valley remains the valley. Its essence is still the spirit of the valley. In the same way, it doesn't matter how many lifetimes you and I go through, you remain the same individual as yourself. Our meeting has come to an end, but the journey continues on. Until next time, may the Tao fill you with peace and happiness.